Hello, everyone out there, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, the title of my message is It's Time to Cross Over to the Other Side. That is what God is saying to His people today. And so, I want to start off by reading in Matthew, the 14th chapter, which talks about, it starts off talking about how Jesus began to tell His disciples to go before Him to the other side, which was across the sea in a boat, which was the Sea of Galilee. And the other side was it was probably another town, because Jesus was previously, before He was telling them to go to the other side, He had performed a miracle where He fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. And so once He sent the disciples ahead of Him, He also began to send the crowds away too, because He needed time by Himself to pray. And so He went by Himself into the mountain to pray, which Jesus did this very often. And Jesus was a great example to us on what we need to do. And so I don't care where He was at any time, as He was walking out, as He was walking on the earth, and He was walking out His ministry. A lot of times when He was in the crowds, He would just go off to Himself, because He needed that time with His Father to get directions or just to stay connected to Him. But I think He basically was doing it for us so that we would know what to do as we begin to walk with Him also. And so one other thing that Jesus did on a regular basis, once He called His disciples and they began to follow Him, He would often test them through different circumstances. And the purpose was so that they could grow in the knowledge of who He was. Because they didn't really know who He was beforehand. And see, once Jesus was no longer there in the flesh, they were going to be His representatives. So they had to know Him personally. They had to really know Him so that they could be effective when they were going out and spreading the gospel. And so this situation that they were in now was just another example of Jesus putting them in His classroom, because He was teaching them through this situation. And see, that is what we have to go through also. Jesus puts us in His class also so that we can learn who He is. And see, we have to know that all the things that we go through, good and bad, the different circumstances that He puts us in, is to prepare us so that when we go to the other side, which is the fulfillment of whatever God has promised you, because it's different for each and every person, that we will be ready. Because He don't want us to get on the other side and then we lose our relationship with Him. And so that's why a lot of times it takes such a long time. A lot of people be wondering, why is it taking so long for what God has promised me? It's because God knows what it's going to take. He knows how long it's going to take, because God does not work fast. Because a lot of times there are so many things we need. There are so many things that we don't need. That's not in us. That we don't need to be in us. I'll put it that way. And so a lot of times when we are going through the process of walking with God, a lot of times people get weary and they just plainly give up. They begin to just lose confidence in God. Because we live in a fast-paced world, so they think that God has to work fast too, but God does not work fast. He takes His time. And so a lot of times when you have the best intentions to walk forward with God, it seems like as soon as you begin to walk forward, here comes some problems, something to get in your way to try to stop you. And sometimes it makes you think, why is God allowing this to happen to me when I'm trying to do my best to walk with Him? And a lot of times those obstacles and problems could be many different things. A lot of times afflictions will come on you. Sometimes lack of money. You used to have money, now you don't have money. You used to have support from people, now you don't have support, just lack in some kind of area. But see, you have to know that this is happening on purpose, because see, when you lack things in different areas, then you have more of a need for God. Because if you did not lack, you would not focus on God at all. You would be focused on what you could do in your own flesh. So a lot of times God lets us lack on purpose, but he knows that if we continue to trust him as we walk with him, he knows how to give you what you need in whatever area that you lack in. So that is why he tells us to keep our eyes stayed on him, because he knows what we need and he knows when we need it. In Isaiah 26:3, it says, I will keep thee in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusts in thee. So God will give you peace even in the midst of going through the obstacles, the problems, the setbacks a lot of times. Because a lot of times this can be hard on your flesh. Especially when you used to things just going smoothly all the time. But all of these things is teaching us. It's maturing us. Because God knows how to strengthen us in those areas where we need help. He knows how to strengthen us. And so we have to keep our eyes on God, because he is the one that has to lead us to the other side. So we have to keep our eyes on him, because we don't know how to get to the other side. Not at all. And so God is saying to many of us, we have been in this place for too long. That place where you feel stuck. Because a lot of us, we feel stuck in our situation. And so I want to read in St. John, the 5th chapter, the 1st through the 8th verse. First I want to go back to Matthew, the 14th chapter, because I didn't even read it. The 14th chapter, the 22nd through the 31st verse. And it says, straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship to go before him unto the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into the mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea. Now Jesus told them to go before him. And so while they were in the ship, they in the midst of the sea, they were tossed with the waves, for the wind was contrary. That means while they were trying to go forward, the wind was blowing them back. It was actually preventing them from going forward. And so I'm sure they became frightened because of this. And so when the disciples saw him, now let me go to the 25th verse. It says, in the 4th watch of the night, Jesus went unto them walking on the water. And it's like, it makes you think, why did Jesus wait till that long to come to them? Because Jesus knew what was going on in the first place. So he waited till the 4th watch of the night, and he went into them. Wait a minute, not swimming in the water, walking on the water. So it was a purpose for that. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, it is a spirit. And they cried out for fear. So they became very fearful in this. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, be of good cheer. It is I, be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come into thee on the water. And have you ever questioned God? Like, if you're trying to step out and do something God told you, You want to be sure that it's God. And this is what Peter was doing. He was saying, God, if it's you, if it's you, Lord, then let me know that it's you. Because you want to be sure. When God is telling you something, sometimes you might question him several times on what he is leading you to do, because it can be very scary and uncomfortable. And so, in the 29th verse, it said, come. So Jesus basically saying, yes, it's me, come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. So Jesus was letting him know supernaturally that if he kept his eyes on him, Peter was walking on the water just like Jesus. And when he saw the wind boisterous, he began to see that wind kick up, which was a storm. And he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him, and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased. So Jesus was teaching them through this situation another lesson. And so he was strengthening their faith, because that's what he spoke about, them not having enough faith. And so we have to continue to have faith in God as well. And so now I want to read about the impotent man in the 5th chapter of John, because this man felt stuck in his condition, because he had been in this condition for a very long time. And so he was paralyzed, but in the scripture it does not say what kind of, it don't say what kind of infirmity was in his body, but he could not walk. It just says that he could not walk. But when he had an encounter with Jesus, it changed his life. And so once Jesus met him, he began to let the man know that it was time for him to cross over. And see, when he crossed over to the other side, for him was his healing. It was time for him to be healed, because he had waited for so very long. And so I want to read in St. John, the 5th chapter, the 1st through the 8th verse. And it says, after this there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is at Jerusalem by the sheep market a pool, which is called in the Hebrew tongue Bethesda, having 5 porches. In these lay a great multitude of impotent folk, of blind, halt, withered, waiting for the moving of the water. An angel went down at a certain season into the pool and troubled the water. Whosoever then first, after the troubling of the water, stepped in, was made whole of whatever disease he had. So every year, it was only once a year that they could get their healing. I guess whoever made it in the pool. And a certain man was there which had an infirmity 38 years. So this man was in his state for 38 years, which was a very long time. And when Jesus saw him lie and knew that he had been now a long time in that case, he said unto him, Wilt thou be made whole? The impotent man answered him, Sir, I have no man when the water is troubled to put me into the pool. But while I am coming, another stepped down before me. So Jesus was saying that he didn't need a help from another person, that he was the answer that he needed. Jesus said unto him, Rise, take up thy bed and walk. And immediately the man was made whole, and took up his bed and walked, and on the same day was the Sabbath. And so his time had come. And so I just want to encourage somebody out there today that's going through sickness in their body in some kind of way, some kind of affliction that they have been dealing with for a long time, that they continue to believe for their healing, because God is a healer. He is a healer. And I know that personally in my own life, I have seen him work in my grandson's life. I'm going to give a testimony about my grandson. My daughter has autism. Not just my daughter, but several of the children in our family have autism. I don't know why so many people in our family have experienced this illness, this particular disability. I have no idea, but God knows. And so I would never have thought that my grandson would have to deal with autism as I have to deal with it with my daughter. You know, I never wanted my daughter to have to go through what I went through raising my daughter. And so my daughter, when she had her son, because he is a twin, but his twin was perfectly normal. She didn't have any problems. But when he was born, we didn't know that he had problems until he, you know, when the babies have milestones that they meet, you know, as they begin to develop, and he was not meeting certain milestones. Like, he did not sit up to the age of 2, you know, which by that time they walking, talking, and doing everything. And so she took him to, you know, we knew something was wrong, you know, but I didn't know exactly what was wrong. So when she took him to get him evaluated, they were saying that he had global disability, which I have no idea what that means. What I'm thinking that meant was that he was not developing in many areas. And so, but I can't, but as, after she had this, I know she was very probably, you know, a little depressed about that situation. And so I had been praying about my grandson, because I did not want my daughter to have to go through what I went through raising my daughter, because it's very hard. It's a very hard life raising a child with autism. And so she began to take him to therapy, because he did not talk. He was not talking. And he was not, like I said, he was very much behind. Compared to his twin, he was so much behind than she was. And so she began to take him on to therapy like weekly. And my grandson, he turned 8 in December. He has came such a long way. This little boy was not talking. And even when he first started talking, you could not really understand what he was saying. But now, I actually said, I said he gonna get to the point where we have to tell him to shut up. But now he done got to the point where he just says all kinds of things. A lot of times he says things that he shouldn't say, to the point where I have to tell him to be quiet. This little boy will talk all day, and he understands perfectly everything that I say to him. He have came such a long way. And I know the Lord has continued to heal him, but just to see how far he have came from where he was is just a testament of God, that he still heals right today. So just be encouraged for somebody out there, you know, because when you're going through in your body, it can be very hard. And so I just want to end this. It's just a short message. I just want to end this by saying, God is ready for us to cross over to what he has for us, because God has great things in store. So be encouraged. Amen. Bye-bye for now. Have a blessed and prosperous day.